Hello, welcome. Welcome to the first of this year's Women on the Rise speaker series, the third year now that we've run this speaker series to bring amazing senior female leaders from around the world to campus to talk to our girls. Of course, the girls run the program, help us choose who's coming in, and you'll see shortly lead the Q&A as well. So without further ado, I'll introduce our two girls who are running the program tonight. We have this evening Anushka Geed and Hannah Ahangar. Please guys, come on up. Anushka is a senior and she is president of our Women on the Rise Club, and Hannah is a 10th grader, and they will help introduce our speaker this evening and kick off the show. Thank you guys.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming. So for a brief bio and introduction, Stephanie Humphrey is inspired by an innate curiosity to know why things work and an entrepreneurial spirit, which was the spark that started her on her present journey into tech life media. She gives helpful advice on how young people can maintain a positive reputation on social media and in cyberspace. She has a master's in telecommunications and networking engineering from the University of Pennsylvania and currently works for Fox 29 for Good Morning Philadelphia. Please welcome Ms. Stephanie Humphrey.
You have to forgive me, I am getting over a sinus infection, so I may sound a little bit raspy, but thank you so much, Anushka and Hannah, for the introduction. Thank you, Dr. Blankenship, for the invitation. I am absolutely honored to be here this evening. Thank you all so much for showing up. I appreciate it, I really do. And I just want to talk a little bit, I got 15 or 20 minutes or so to talk a little bit about my journey. And I like to sort of frame it in this context. What box? It's sort of making a case for charting your own course, because I don't think in this day and age any of us can really assume that where we start is where we're going to finish. So this is sort of my example of how things tend to just work out if you work hard and you keep your nose clean. So when you talk about that idea of success and that journey and what that looks like, I love this graphic because people do think that it kind of is just an A to B. And I mean, you know, hey, listen, if you can go to school, go to college, be a political science major, go to law school, become a senator, and then become president, then good for you. But the likelihood that that's going to happen for most of us is just not high. You know, it's more a meandering sort of start and stop, it fits type of thing. And in addition to the idea that it's not going to be a straight line, there are also a few other things that I would like the young ladies in the audience especially to know about that journey towards success. I'll let these guys. Hi, thanks for coming. Sorry. No worries. There are a few other things that I want the young people in the audience to know about this journey. Number one, it's going to take some hard work and sacrifice. I mean, you hear it, you've heard it since you were born, you are going to continue to hear it, and that's because it is true. There really isn't a way around that thing, getting you to where you need to go. Even if you get discovered on a sex tape, you still actually got to do the work after that. So, you know, even for the Kardashians, those girls hustle. So there really is not any substitution for hard work, and some sacrifices will need to be made as well. The second thing is networking and relationships. Nothing you do is going to happen without somebody else helping you do it. Nothing you do, nothing you think you want to do, anywhere you ever want to go, any place you've ever been is going to be because of someone else. So it is really important to understand that you need to start making those relationships now. You need to start cultivating that network now. You don't ever want to call somebody when you need them, because you want to have already established that relationship beforehand. And then the third thing, is just to be fearless. That's sort of my life's motto. I had it printed on my checks at one point. I have little Post-its all around my room that say "Be fearless." And I think that what goes along with that is that there's doubt that comes with that. There's anxiety and insecurity that comes with that. But you just got to do it anyway. You really do. You just got to do it anyway. And that sort of helped me. Back in my high school days, I had to exert a little bit of fearlessness, for this guy. This is not the guy, but this was a guy like a guy I knew named Jason Spiegelman. I will never forget his name. Jason, for whatever reason, felt compelled to make us competitors. Out of everybody else in the class, I was in 11th grade trigonometry and 12th grade physics with Jason Spiegelman, and he was hell-bent on, fighting me for class dominance for some reason. I'm not sure why I got singled out, but it got to the point where he would literally take my hand and pull me up to the teacher's desk so that he could justify why my grades were higher than his. It was pretty ridiculous, and a less confident person might have allowed that to seep in, might have internalized that. But when I talk about being fearless, that means that you understand your worth and you understand what you know, and you have a confidence in what you've done and the work you've done and what you've accomplished, so you can tell them, listen, I got the 98, you got the 96, you'll live. And you can stand in that, and you don't allow what someone else might think of you for whatever reason. I don't know if it was because I was a girl. I don't know if it was because I was a black girl. But for whatever reason, your opinion of me doesn't matter, and it's not going to cause me to shrink from what I know that I'm capable of doing. So, I think, especially when we're talking about STEM these days and girls, and the fact that detour, that hard left, comes right around, 7th or 8th grade because they don't want to be perceived as the smart one or the nerd or whatever. That's where that fearlessness comes in. You have to help your young ladies understand that it's okay to be smart. And it's okay to be smarter than a boy. And if he can't handle that, then, he's not the boy you want to associate yourself with. And that does take a little courage and a little bit of understanding that you're going to have to go against the grain a bit. But that's what we want to be encouraging our young ladies to do, is to be fearless. You guys can come on in. I'll take a quick break. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. And then there was a different kind of fearlessness, a little bit of thinking outside the box too. When I went away to college at a school almost 1,000 miles away from home, and I had never been on an airplane before I graduated from high school, and I was leaving my family and everybody I knew to sort of set up shop in Tallahassee, Florida. So it was a transition. It was a change. It was a bit of a struggle, but you fall back on what you've been taught. You fall back on those lessons. And you fall back on that fearlessness. My mother did a great job. I have to give her all the credit for instilling in me that belief that I truly could do whatever I wanted to do. So that's sort of how I approach most things in life. And it really was a easier transition than I expected it to be. One, because it was being paid for, and two, because I had that foundation. And, talk about fearlessness, a 15-hour drive. When I got my car, finally, in my 4th year of college, I drove back and forth to school by myself. So it was a bit of fearlessness getting through West Virginia and all those places at 3 a.m., but it got me through. And then when I graduated, we'll get to that. When I graduated and moved to Philadelphia to start a career as an engineer for Lockheed Martin, it was a little bit of fearlessness that had to live then as well. I can remember when I moved here, we came out, we met with a relocation specialist. We ended up not getting that apartment. We moved into the city. I got a place in the city, in University City, 46th and Chester, if anybody is familiar with where Clark Park is and that area. And I had to come back out here. My mom came with me to do the whole reload thing, but then I came back out here by myself to start work. So I packed up my truck with all my worldly possessions and drove out here, and I'm on Chester Avenue, right at 46th Street, and I can remember being so paranoid about being in the city that I literally, would pull out what I could carry, lock my door, go up 4 flights, come back down flights, unlock the door, lock the door, go up. It was insane. It was June, and the very next day I started work. So it was another opportunity to step out of that comfort zone, to get outside of that box, and to be fearless and start my life here as an engineer. And now this one. I think we've all been here at one point or another in our careers, and it took a lot, actually, for me to admit to myself that this is how I felt at work. Like, literally, if I had worn a tie, that might be me. And, it was 13 years of working. It was a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. It was a Master of Science in Telecommunications and Networking Engineering. It was a lot of late nights in front of a computer. It was that good job. It was 6 figures. It was vacations to Jamaica and Italy. It was, King of Prussia Mall, Tuesdays and Thursdays, it was a lot. It was a lot that I knew that I would be giving up to make this transition. It was a lot, and I tell this story all the time, and it's God's honest truth. It took me a year and a half to leave my job. Once I kind of decided on what I would do and came to the idea that I would be in media and entertainment and things like that. I had a plan about how much money I wanted to save and different things I wanted to have happen with my finances so that I would be comfortable leaving a 6-figure salary. But when I finally got to that point, there was 30 days between the time I gave my notice and the time I left my job, because I worked for Lockheed, so there were a lot of different debrief kind of things for security purposes and transition of materials and things like that. So I wanted to give them enough time to get the new person up to speed and things like that. So for 30 days, and this had never happened to me before, I was having panic attacks at night. I couldn't sleep. I had to sleep propped up on pillows because if I would lay down, the acid would come up and the heartburn and the anxiety, and I would just pop out of bed like, what am I about to do right now? Like, is this really what I've decided to do with my life, and just walk away from all of this, from this 13-year career? And every single night, just couldn't sleep, acid, sleeping up on pillows, restless. I recognize them now as panic attacks, but at the time, I'm like, what's going on? Did I, was the chili too spicy, or like, what's happening? I really couldn't identify what was happening there, but I promise you, the day I left, March 28th, 2007, I slept like a baby. I really, really did. I floated out of that place, floated, and slept so good, and slept in the next day, and it was just the absolute best decision I've ever made in my life. It really, really was, but it required a certain level of fearlessness, a certain thinking outside the box, because what am I actually going to do with this whole career? Because at the time, I wasn't yet Tech Life Steph. If anybody is on social, that's where you can follow me. I was an actor and a model. And this came about because of networking and relationships. So a friend of mine that I worked out with at the time, she was the manager of the Dress Barn on City Avenue, right next to the Acme. And she said, oh, come be in my fashion show. We're going to put some regular people in there, and you're cute, and we'll put you in something, show you a little stomach off. And if you do it, you can get a discount on whatever you buy that night. I was like, well, count me in. I mean, that was pretty much a no-brainer at that point. And what literally only in my mind was a favor for a friend turned into an entire career, because there was a woman there that had a modeling agency. And she asked me, do you model professionally? You were really good. I'm like, no, what are you talking about? I'm like, not 6 foot, I'm not a size 0, I'm not, I'm not all these things. And she said, well, you should think about it because you were really good. Now, I don't know if she was trying to sell me runway classes or not, but the seed was planted. And the more I started looking into it, the more it kind of made a lot of sense, and it was something that I was able to do while I still worked as an engineer. So it was a fun hobby for a long time, and a couple extra dollars in my pocket, and one more mall trip during the week. But then I worked with a photographer that got me my first agent, and this is one of my print ads that ended up in a magazine for Lowe's Home Improvement. And speaking of relationships, this was me at a company called Tango Traffic. I report traffic, by the way. I still report traffic, actually, because, as a freelancer, you gotta hustle. So on Saturday, this Saturday, at 10 a.m. until 4 p.m., you can turn on KYW News Radio 1060, and you will hear me say, 95 southbound is jammed from Woodhaven down to the Vine Street Expressway. You might notice a little bit of volume when you get around Philly International, but once you hit Delco and 420, things open up quite nicely for you down to the state line. That's what I do. But the relationship that started this whole thing, well, first it was the hard work, because while I was working, I was hosting and producing a lifestyle show of my own called Style Tips with Stephanie Humphrey. Very, very original and creative, I know. But and for any of the young ladies in the audience, there's a studio called Radnor 21 on Lancaster Avenue in Wayne, right across the street from the movie theater, that will allow anybody to come in and produce whatever kind of content I won't say whatever kind of content they want, but they'll put it on air. They'll help you shoot, they'll help you edit, they'll help you produce, and they'll put it on air. So it's a great way to get experience if television is something that you're interested in, because that's what I did. I was working to get a reel together that I could send out, so I was still working full-time, producing, hosting this show, and put a reel together and send it out to all the different stations here, 6, 3, and 10, and they called me in. They called me in to start working, backing up Bob Kelly on CBS 3. And when I left that job, because relationships matter, the woman that trained me ended up being the woman that was doing the hiring for this network, Tango Traffic. And it was hilarious, because I walked in, they did this open call for traffic anchors at PHL Studios in Wynwood. And I guess it was some sort of like horrible American Idol-esque thing when the people were just so bad that they were just like, what are we gonna do? We can't find anybody. And a friend of mine had let me know, and I walked in and she's like, I'm so glad to see you. What shift do you want, basically? But it was that relationship that I had nurtured from when I was at CBS 3, from being a hard worker, from being conscientious, that led to this job and me not really even having to audition for it. And then there's this. This is the first time I was on air at Fox 29. This was like December 12th, 2012, roughly. And there's a whole lot of things that go in this story. The squiggly line of the journey, the thinking outside the box, the hard work, the networking, the fearlessness. Because before this, as you saw, I was reporting traffic, I was shooting Lowe's ads, I'm in 2 feature films, I was doing commercials and pharmaceutical videos for companies, for Merck and places like that. And my intent when I left my job initially was to be an entertainment reporter. That's what I was working towards. So I had done some red carpet stuff, I had done some movie press junkets, but what I had found out was that it's really hard to be an entertainment reporter, because everybody wants to be an entertainment reporter. Everybody wants to ask, who are you wearing on a red carpet? And there are a lot of actual journalists that do it. So I was hitting that wall. Everybody's where'd you go to school for journalism? I'm like, well, I'm actually an engineer. And the eyes glaze over and it's like, thanks for coming. So it was really, really challenging to break into that part of the business as an entertainment reporter. So I had a meeting with an executive down at Comcast at the time, and this is when Comcast used to be sort of part owner of TV One. And I was all set to dazzle him and make him love me. He was going to put me on TV, come hell or high water. It was January, I'll never forget it. And I was went and bought this dress that was like sausage casing and, had the suede high heels in January that were a half size too small, but they were cute, they were perfect, and I had to wear them, but I said, my toe will be fine. And, I had a wig and hair and makeup and the whole nine, walking in there, confident, fearless, and I sit down and I start telling about myself, Stephanie, I'm trying to do entertainment reporter. I was an engineer before, but now I'm an entertainment reporter, blah, 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 blah. So he lets me rattle on for about 15 minutes, and he looks at me like this. And he was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, with the bottom lip quivering, what do you mean? I'm thinking I'm doing everything right to have this career. And he said, what are you doing? He said, you walked in here, you mentioned you were an engineer in passing, and you haven't talked about it since. What are you doing? Oh, I don't know. And he said, listen, I know 1,000 pretty girls that want to be on a red carpet. He said, I don't know anybody that looks like you that can talk about technology. And when I tell you, you could have knocked me over like, I think I saw an actual light bulb over my head at that point. And in that moment, I kid you not, I said, oh, I could be a tech life expert. And that was it. And that was it. And I spent the whole rest of the day trying to figure out what the hell I had been doing this whole time. And what I came up with, or at least what I am comfortable and will allow myself to live with, because I can't believe that I've wasted, 3 years before I decided to become a technology and lifestyle expert, is that I had so closely intertwined the idea of being an engineer with working at Lockheed, working at a place that I did not love, that I was trying to get away from all of it. So I had thrown the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But I was born an engineer. I was born a teacher. I was tutoring kids in 5th grade, so there was no reason for me to throw away that part of myself in order to do what I love to do now, which is run my mouth on television. So, thinking outside the box led me to embrace this new path, because I could have just said, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm fabulous, look at my dress. And could have continued to try to pursue entertainment reporting and beating my head up against a wall and having some small successes. But I was fearless enough to embrace that pivot, because it was a huge shift. And where the relationship part comes in, Chanel Jones and I, when I was back in my modeling days, when she got married, she was the celebrity guest at a bridal fashion show over in New Jersey. And I was one of the other models in the show. And I can remember, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Chanel in person, but she's literally this big. I can pick her up and put her in my pocket. She's about 4'7", 60 pounds soaking wet. And they put her in this dress that literally weighed more than she did. And we're clipping her and she's sweating, and of course it's in this grand ballroom that has a dual staircase, and you got to come down and go down the runway and come back up, and she is struggling and she is miserable. And we just all laughed about how we had to, sew her into this dress basically, and how horrible it was that she had to carry this thing that weighed as much as she did down a runway. And fast forward to 2012, because I had my epiphany about being a technology and lifestyle expert at the beginning of 2012. 10. And in that time, I had been blogging and writing for outlets and different things like that, but I hadn't been able to crack that TV nut, so to speak. I had been sending stuff out to people. I had been, you know, hey, I'm a former engineer. I do TV now. You should have me on to talk about this cool app or the new iPhone, and wasn't getting anywhere. Had hired a publicist, emptied out my savings to pay her, wasn't getting anywhere. And in 2012, December 2012, I saw Chanel at a mutual friend's birthday party. And I said, hey, remember when you got married and you did that fashion show and you were just like, oh my God, I remember that. And she said, are you still doing traffic? I said, no, actually, I'm doing tech now. And she said, oh, well, send me something. Send me a pitch. And I was on air 10 days later. And this was the first time I was on Fox 29. Oh, it was awesome. I keep hitting the button. I was on air 10 days later. She was wonderful. But it was that relationship and the work that led up to it that made that possible. And then there's QVC. I spent 2 years as the spokesperson for HP on the QVC shopping channel. And that was a learning experience, definitely a growth experience. A friend of mine who I had worked with, because I had worked with QVC as a model for years. And when I made the pivot, a friend of mine let me know that HP was looking for somebody. And you should talk to somebody. So again, relationships kind of helping things along, but you have to be prepared for when the opportunity comes. It's not just about knowing the right person. Test. I think I lost it. Test. Okay, there we go. Thank you. It's not just about knowing the right person, but it's about being ready when the right opportunity comes along. And that couldn't have come along at a better time. It was a great time, actually. It was an interesting time. And then there was Harry. I spent about 1.5 years as a technology contributor to The Harry Show, hosted by Harry Connick Jr., unfortunately, which did not get picked up for a 3rd season. But again, hard work and relationships. So while I was at QVC, I was going to New York to do segments for a tiny little show called The Security Brief with Paul Vialis. And by all of the blank expressions in this room, I can assume that none of you have ever seen it. I've never even seen it. I'm not even sure where in the country it aired, to be perfectly honest. I've never seen it. But one of the producers found my YouTube channel, and she said, you know, we'd love to have you come on and talk about some apps and different stuff like that. So did that, and when she left that show, she became a producer on The Harry Show. And I was one of the first people she called. Oh my God, we're getting our experts together in line for the show that's starting with Harry Connick, and you have to be our tech expert. So those relationships are what led to these opportunities. And the work, because I was updating my YouTube channel and I was creating my own content. And I was doing all those things in preparation for getting that phone call. That was a great time, actually. I miss Harry. He was very sweet. And then, sort of the goal had always been, when I had that epiphany in that guy at Comcast office, the goal was always to be a contributor to a national morning show. You know, my preference would have been the Today Show, because that's the one that I watched. But you know, I was not going to be picky. This was just, again, right place, right time, the trust and the fearlessness that the people you have around you will actually do what they say they're going to do. Because I can tell you, my publicist got this from me, my new publicist. Because when I had my old publicist, she wasn't very good. And, you know, I don't have to tell anybody how expensive PR is. And I spent a lot of money for someone that really wasn't qualified to help me do what I was trying to do. And it was a hard lesson, an expensive lesson to learn. But it also made me very gun shy when it came to publicists. I said, you know what, I guess I'm just gonna have to get out here and do this on my own. And I met someone, and we had a conversation, and I knew I had to lose that fear because I knew I wasn't gonna get to this point on my own. So there was a certain level of fearlessness that I had to call up to get to this point. And this was just this past January. So we hope to be back soon. But just this whole story, really, and this, my labor of love, I have a seminar called Till Death Do You Tweet, and this kind of came from thinking outside the box, really. Till Death Do You Tweet it helps students understand social media, how to be good digital citizens, and it actually came about probably like 6 or 7 years ago because I didn't want to bore young people to sleep at career day. And when I was being asked to come in and speak about being an engineer and all this other stuff, you know, I work in a classified environment. If I tell you what I do, I have to kill you. So it's not very interesting. It doesn't make for a very interesting conversation. So at the time, it was actually called What Happens on the Internet Stays on the Internet Forever. And it was born out of a desire to give students information that they actually cared about. You know, you can ask me about what it means to be an engineer after we get finished with this. But you guys are on your phones all day anyway. This is what you're doing. There's some things that you need to know to navigate these internet waters safely. And this is what I care about, and this is what I want to present to you. So it evolved since then. And, you know, got a new name, we got logos now, and incorporations and all that good stuff. But it really required another sort of pivot and another outside the box thinking as far as what else I could do. You know, because television is fickle, and you're not always working, and what else do you have to offer that you can use your skill set to do effectively? So this was great. This was just this past, what was this, October? Yeah, October, I believe, in Michigan City, Indiana, with the 8th and 9th graders there. So it was just a wonderful time. The kids were awesome, and again, it requires that vulnerability, that hard work, that fearlessness. You know, when you have a group of kids that sort of swarm you after the seminar, and they all want to know things, and they're all so scared, and they're all unsure, you have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for that. You have to live in the confidence that you can give them something that they need, that you can help them, that you know what you know, and that thing has value. And that's where the fearlessness comes in. So, understand, success is not a straight line. I've been around the world and back at this point, and we'll probably lap the globe a couple more times before it's all said and done. It's going to take a lot of hard work and sacrifice, a lot of hard work and sacrifice. I'm going to say that one more time, a lot of hard work and sacrifice. It's going to take networking and relationships that you want to start building right now, and don't wait until you need them to use them, to call on those people, to try to develop them. And it's going to take a little bit of fearlessness. You just got to do it. It's scary. It's unknown. You maybe don't think, why would anybody want to listen to me? Am I pretty enough? Am I smart enough? But you just got to do it. You just got to do it. And at the end of the day, you have to understand that there actually is no box. So, that's all I got. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you guys. You want to come on up, girls? Or...
I just wanted to quickly ask you, you've been talking about how there is no straight line and there's a lot of hard work and sacrifice. So I was quickly wondering, what do you think has been one of the biggest obstacles that you faced in your career?
I suppose it was an obstacle. I think it was more of a hit to my ego when I had my epiphany and decided that I was going to do technology and media and things like that. I sort of assumed that people would beat a path to my door. I mean, I had 2 engineering degrees. I had a ton of media experience by then because I had been doing traffic and all these other things, and I'm cute. So I was just like, why wouldn't they put me on the? I had been writing for a year and a half, you know, tech articles and things like that. So I didn't understand why it wasn't working. That was a very, very hard thing for me to come to grips with and understand, like, what's not working, what should I be doing differently, how do I get over this hump and get to that platform that I'm trying to get to. So that was pretty big for me.
And I know after all of your big obstacles and that you've overcome, now your specialty is technology. So what are some of the positive uses of social media that, you know, young children like us could, you know, benefit from?
Positive social media. Is that like an oxymoron or something? No, I just posted something today on my Instagram because I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Ryan, that does, the little boy that does videos on YouTube and unboxes toys. He was the highest grossing earner this year. He earned $22 million. So I'd say that was a pretty positive use of social media. But I also look at social activism is a real thing. You know, the Parkland students organized the March for Our Lives on Twitter almost exclusively. You know, Black Lives Matter took off because of Twitter. I think hashtag activism is a real thing that actually does work. You know, people use GoFundMe all the time to raise money for their projects and for medical situations and things like that. So there definitely are practical and positive applications. I mean, in Tumblr, you know, has been really good. We'll see where it goes now that they've banned porn, but they've been really good about creating communities for people that feel marginalized to find their tribe, basically, and I think it's really helped a lot of people, you know, in the LGBT community, transgender community, things like that. So I think social media works when it creates communities for people to feel like they have a safe space to be themselves.
So speaking about, you know, teenagers and starting activism through social media, do you have any advice for high schoolers?
If you wanted to kind of use social as a
like
tool?
using social media.
I would say be consistent. That's, I think, across the board for anybody that wants to use social media for anything. It only works if you're consistent. Find a platform. Find the platform where your audience lives and be consistent on that platform and put out content that they care about. You know, right now video is pretty much everything. So find that platform and be consistent, because if people can't rely on, you know, updates from you and information for what's happening with your cause, they lose interest really, really quickly. So I would just say find your platform and be consistent.
What would you say the platform that you use most is?
I love Instagram. I'm a big fan of Instagram because it's quick. It's pretty easy. I do a 60-second tech break every Wednesday on Instagram, and it kind of follows a logic of watch, learn, do, and it's just a quick nugget, but it's relevant information, it's actionable information. I love the reach that you can get with the platform and the visuals.
So, to start all of this, like I know you've been talking about relationships and making like networking connections and stuff like that. Do you have one big mentor, or do you have multiple mentors?
It's funny. I saw that question on the sheet, and I had to chuckle to myself. I have a mentor now, finally, but it took me a really, really long time. And I guess, you know, if you take anything from the stories, is that don't wait this long to get a mentor. I don't know if it was partly because I didn't necessarily see the value in it, or my ego made me believe I did not need one, or what, but I literally just got my mentor within the last 2 years. And I went to an event, some women's networking event, and she was the keynote speaker there, and so, and her keynote was about mentorship. And she had just relayed all these different, she had like 30 different mentors throughout her career and her life, and school from college to, you know, every job she's had, and she just talked about how these people advocated for her and sponsored different jobs and all that. I was like, man, you got the hookup. Like, how do you do this? How did you do this? So I got a meeting with her because I really just wanted to know the secret sauce. I'm like, because clearly, you know something about mentors and how to get one. So, you know, I'm talking to them about, what do you do? How do you reach out? We're having this conversation, and it's kind of going in this circle, and she's saying some things. I'm still like, but I just don't understand. And so she just stops talking, and sits there and folds her hand, and she's like, Stephanie. And then she just, yeah, like everybody says, what you do? She just let it hang. And I'm like, and in my head, I know what she wants me to do, but it took me so long to actually say, will you be my mentor? And she was like, yes, I've been waiting for a half an hour for you to ask me to da-da-da-da. I was like, oh God. So I don't know what the mental block was in my head, but it's been amazing. I would highly recommend, you know, get as many mentors as you can, as early as you can. And keep in touch, you know. Understand too that, especially for young people, the bulk of the responsibility of maintaining that relationship will fall on you. So, you know, I think, you know, young people kind of get discouraged and bored and like, oh, she didn't email me back. And I'm like, that's because she's busy, because she's the CEO. And so you have to understand that a lot of the responsibility for maintaining that relationship will fall on you, but it's so worth it. So worth it.
So what are some of the next steps for closing the gender gap in the technology field?
Oy, jeez, yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of things around culture that are so embedded in our society that the expectation that they're just not going to exist in the tech industry is unrealistic. You know, we need some societal shifts to happen. But I will say, you know, it's kind of up to us. I without trying to place any blame, I don't think women in the tech industry do a good enough job of making themselves seen. And I think there's a reason for that. I think, you know, engineers don't think like that. You know, we're not thinking, oh, I need to go and show another little girl how to, we're thinking I need to solve this problem and get this code out and that's it. So we tend to be very focused on the task at hand. So sort of external things like that kind of slip by us sometimes. But I think women, because there are, you know, the numbers don't lie, there aren't as many as there should be, but there are women in the tech industry. And we do see, you know, those women that are doing, you know, tech marketing and different stuff like that, sort of making a name for themselves. But we need those engineers, we need those coders, we need, you know, those scientists to actually step out of that lab and into the spotlight. Because I think girls, you have to see it to know that is an option. And you know, if we could stop with the pink Legos, that would be helpful too. I don't think you need to genderize the toys that our kids are using to get interested in the industry as well.
When we think back to the moment where you stepped from behind the scenes into the spotlight, right? We're saying that's what girls, you know, that's one thing that will change STEM for girls, change the realm of engineering for women. What gave you the impetus to do that? Because I think a lot of girls wonder, well, you know, what is going to be my signal for when I can, why I should?
Right.
What was your moment of realizing that was the next step? But you talked a lot about it, you know, overall, but was there one moment, one inspiration, one aha?
I don't think so. I had always done that. I was in a program called Positive Intervention at Lockheed, where we went to a school in Norristown and worked with those young people. I had always been a big sister. I kind of always was an advocate for that thing. And I think it's just been in the, because there's so much money being transferred into space right now. The startup culture is so big, and it's become very sexy to run a startup. That the push for more women in engineering and STEM is happening right now. But I think I had always understood the importance of that, so I always made myself available when I had the opportunity to be seen.
So you've taken this time to talk to us about how you created your career. Do you know any steps that you're planning on taking to further it?
Boy. Well, I work with a manager. I am constantly putting out content. We had a conversation earlier about my book. I am really trying very hard to stay focused to complete a book. And I'm working on some new things with Till Death You Tweet to sort of expand the offering.
I don't know if you can disclose this, but could you talk more about what your book is about?
It's about your digital footprint. It's called Don't Let Your Digital Footprint Kick You in the Butt. And because I think, we see a lot of books around personal branding. That's like a big buzz phrase these days. Everybody has a brand, and we do. I don't think we can get away from that as working professionals and as young people. But I don't think enough time is spent on what not to do as it relates to how you comport yourself on social media. And I don't think people know enough about the actual consequences of what's happening to people out here on these internet streets when they're not really doing what they should do. So it's going to be a balance of both. Lots of real world examples of people losing jobs and different things like that. But then also the resource part of it to help people that do want to build a brand online.
Well, we want to make sure you're a resource for everyone in the room as well, so we want to give people in the audience a chance to ask questions. Any questions before I kick it back to the girls? I think, no, I see one of our girls in the audience thinking about a question, but yeah, please.
So you talked a lot about being aware of the footprint that you have in the present moment. What about if I'm 24 right now, I'm ending my college education. If you made some poor decisions about just things that you just said that are kind of cavalier. I haven't even checked anything I've said, but I'm just guessing.
There's probably something.
Like being a teenager, what do you do retroactively if there's...
So I'll repeat the question for our live stream audience.
Okay.
We have viewers watching and alum around the world watching online too. So what do you do if you think there's something in your digital footprint that you're concerned about? Is there something our girls or our adults in the audience should be thinking about?
There is actually, delete whatever you can, obviously, go back and clean up whatever you can. And I'll tell you a story from the book. This is going to, because this actually is happening as we speak, and it's a friend of mine that it's happening to. You can sort of SEO your way out of bad posts. And if you're familiar with SEO, search engine optimization is kind of the science behind what shows up when someone Googles something. So, and in what order. So what you would want to do is sort of flood the internet with better content of your own. Because the more stuff you can put out there consistently, it will link to all the other stuff, and that'll bubble to the top, basically. So definitely have a presence on social networks because their SEO is excellent. And if you're active and your profiles are complete and you're consistent, most of those will come up first. LinkedIn is actually great for that. Like if you have a LinkedIn profile, which you should, and it's 100% complete, that usually is the first thing that you see, unless you have your own website, because Bluehost and GoDaddy are very, very good at SEO as well. But just flood the internet with as much of your own positive content as you can, so that those negative things will tend to kind of sink down a little bit.
Wow, I think that gives us all hope, right?
Well, there is that, and I do. I want to tell the story. So a friend of mine, I didn't even But a friend of mine, and he didn't have anything bad, but there was something bad about him put online. So he came to me, he's like, Steph, what do I do? He's actually in the entertainment industry as well. And someone had taken some of his pictures from his Facebook page, or they may have done Google image search, and they posted them to a website called stddirectory.com. Yeah. And it's like, ladies, stay away from this guy. He's no good. He has herpes. He did just awful, 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 awful. And the way he found out was because his mom Googled him. Yeah. Because she wanted to show somebody all the cool stuff her baby was doing. And because he hadn't been consistent with his own content, that entry came up second. That was the second thing you saw about him when you Googled his name. So he's in a panic. He's like, this could affect my work. You know, people Google me all the time. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So we tried to find out who owned the website and different things like that. He's pursuing, you know, trying to figure out what his legal options are right now. But I said, in the meantime, you got to flood the internet with your own content. Like, because, you know, sites like that aren't investing in SEO. You know, they don't have a team, they're not paying someone. The person who set it up is just trying to extort people because there were ads on the site for reputation management, and they wanted $1,500 to take it down, to take the entry down. And that's, so they're just trying to make a quick buck, so they're not really invested in their infrastructure and things like that. So it's actually pretty easy to get that off the first page, you know. So I said, you gotta fill out these profiles, you gotta start posting more often. I'm like, you're in the business anyway, you should be using social as a branding and marketing tool for yourself. So that's what he did. He got super active. He actually went out and sort of secured some press for himself, because media outlets also have very good SEO. And within a few weeks, we had gotten it down from second to like 9th on the page. And this has been a couple months now that he's been very, very active. It's like on page 5. And we are right now around 97% of the population does not look past the first page in a Google search result. And of that 97%, half of those people don't even look past the first 3 links that come back. So, you know, on page 5, it's pretty much buried. You know, for the most part, there could be somebody that just maliciously wants to try to hunt down some information about him, but on page 5, it's pretty much buried. So, you know, he dominates his first page of his Google search result now.
Great, thank you.
So
Sorry, I'm gonna go with the student behind you, sorry.
have you ever been like marginalized, you know, to like a great extent because of like your gender or like your race, like despite all the struggles that, you know, you face as you told us about? Have you like been marginalized, you know, just because of your gender or your race?
Yes, I think we probably all have a story, and it was one of the reasons why I wasn't a big fan of modeling, because they do that all the time in that business, and there's no expectation that the models know anything, have ever done anything, have ever read anything, and so I would pull rank. You know what I mean? If I'm on set and a camera guy is trying to cook something up and it's not working, I'm like, well, did you try? Is the HDMI port working? Well, what do you know, babe? Well, just my 2 engineering degrees. That's all. That's all. You know, I know a little something. So it really, you know, made for some uncomfortable moments on set. There were some moments when, you know, I was tasked to be blacker. And I actually walked off a set for that, because it's funny, she was trying so hard to say be blacker without saying be blacker. She was like, I need it sassier. Can you do it sassier? I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, I'm doing it like a normal human being. I'm delivering it was a commercial for like a home repair thing. Home repair needs to be sassy? Like, I don't understand. I don't get it. So there's definitely been those instances. But you know, you just have to be grounded in who you are. You have to have that foundation there, understanding, you know, who you are, what you have to offer, and being willing to walk away if necessary.
That's good advice and things that I think our girls, we give them that grounding, that identity, but also that trick of walking away sometimes. It's a good thing to keep in mind. Oh, sorry, we have another student and then I'll come back. Yeah.
Do you ever regret going through so much to finally get the job that you liked?
Absolutely not. That's a great question, though. Absolutely not. I mean, there was that moment when I was sitting in that office at Comcast where I was like, what have I been doing with my whole life, you know? But, you know, when you go back and think about the journey, I tend to do that a lot. I run my movie back in reverse quite a bit and just analyze how I got here, and everything that I went through got me here. And I don't know that it would have happened the way that it has had I not done all of those things. So definitely not.
And what was one lesson from those tough times in retrospect, you know, during your time at Lockheed that you now use now, so that even the tough moments are things you take with you? Is there one thing that sticks out to you?
Honestly, it's my faith. I just got my first tattoo this year. I am a person of faith, and I rely on that exclusively, really, to get me through everything. So
That's great, thank you. One more question?
My question was much less interesting. Regarding the student question, the SEO, how to clean up your digital footprint. Are there companies you can hire to do that?
absolutely, yeah.
I was gonna say, or are you going to start one?
That's not a bad idea. They're very expensive though. That's the
Right.
thing. And you know, I don't know that they do that much more than you can do yourself. I think it's just a matter of people not wanting to do it, and you know, sometimes it can get a little convoluted and involved, and you know, tracking down, you know, doing who is searches to track down who owns a certain website and different things like that. So you know, I think people just want to outsource that. But yeah, you can make some money.
Yes, please.
What would be your number one advice to the parents in the room about helping control and coach their kids on social media?
Control.
I
In general, or on social media, or
controlling the environment that we provide that they have access to at this age, and then coaching them to use it responsibly. What should parents know that we may not have experienced at their age? What do we need to know?
You have to understand that it's a team effort. Number one, you know that word control sort of made my ears perk up pretty quickly. It is definitely a team effort, and you have to help your young person understand that there are consequences to their actions. It's a really tough thing to drill when they're not immediate consequences, but you have to help them understand that they do exist. You know, whether you pull up some examples of hey, look what happened to this student when they posted this, or look what happened. You know, this is a thing that's really out here, and I know it's tough. You know, in this climate of people not acting so nice online and different things like that, but just helping them and impressing upon them the fact that there are real consequences to digital behavior is what I found to drive the lesson home. As I speak to students, you know, they just don't know, and they don't know what they don't know. And you know, when you tell them, like, look, there's 3 different classes of misdemeanors for sexting for minors in Pennsylvania, and if you get caught in Delaware, it's still a felony. So, like, different things like that, just that understanding that they do have this thing that they're going to have to be responsible for years down the line, I think changes the conversation a little bit.
Thank you. Well, we have certainly taken a lot of lessons, whether from social media or career or out of the box, from what you said today. When you think back, and remembering that our audience here, you know, we start at 4 years old all the way through Anushka and our friends, 17, 18, off to college soon. And when you're thinking back to the lessons of your career, the out of the box part,
Right.
what was the one moment when you were a kid that you look back that was most impactful? This is sort of the closing it up to making you believe that the out of the box way was the most fun, the most successful, going to be the key. Is there anything you look back on now and you say, that was a moment when I realized that out of the box would serve me well?
Right. Oh, that's a great question. Was I thinking it's so funny because I was a very regimented child. I appreciate structure. I'm an engineer. I like straight lines, you know. I like when things make sense. I like logic.
Or anybody you think back now that had that planted the seed?
Right.
Or did it just come to you later?
It's so weird. It's because I to this day am not sure where it came from, because this, you know, wasn't my career choice. You know, I wasn't the kid that stood in the mirror with a hairbrush, you know, as a microphone and saying live from, you know, we're on the scene here. Like I didn't do that. You know, I had never considered media as an option before it was happening, before I was actually doing it. So I can only call it divine because it didn't come from me. It really didn't come from me. It was only when I was sort of presented with the opportunity that something just clicked and made sense.
Awesome. Well, and I think that's the lesson in of itself, right? That you look for the opportunities, girls, and you grab them when they come, and it doesn't matter which direction they come from, you grab it. And I think that's a fantastic note to end on, but we do have a little bit of a wrap-up. I'll hand it up to Hannah to wrap it up for us this evening.
Well, I'd just like to thank you on behalf of the ballroom community for coming and talking to us about
Thank you so
social
much
media
for having
positivity. We have a gift for you.
Oh, yay! I like gifts.
There you go.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy it. And just please be on the lookout for any future Women on the Rise events that we will be hosting.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. As Hannah said, we will be announcing shortly our next Women on the Rise speaker for early in 2019, but we appreciate everyone coming out on this cold winter evening, so have a good night.
Before you guys go, can we get a selfie? Because you know, if it did land on the ground, it didn't happen.